Welcome to the Better Together podcast, where we look for ways we can work together to advance the gospel of Jesus Christ. Today we have with us Pastor Sherman Branch. He is the pastor of Emmanuel Church in Dallas, North Carolina, where he has been for over 23 years, for 22 and a half years as the pastor. And so, Brother Sherman, it's so good to have you here with us today, my friend.
Thank you for having me, Dr. Moody. It's a joy to be with you.
Now, you have been a pastor for a long time, so tell us a bit about the ministry that you've had over the last 2+ decades, brother.
I started out with a pastor in the Kannapolis area as a youth pastor. Worked there 5 years, moved to a small church in that area, pastored there 5 years. And then we had a little bit of a break and moved to the Plymouth, North Carolina area. Didn't even know that place existed until a pastor friend called me and said, "Hey, this church has called me. They're looking for a pastor. I'm in the middle of starting a church, so I can't go." I gave them your name. "Is that okay?" I said, "It's fine." And when we hung up the phone, I turned to my wife and said, "We can start packing. We're going to move to Plymouth, North Carolina." I just knew it was God's will. And we stayed there for 9 years, just shy of 9 years. And then moved back to our home area.
Very good. You've been in your home area ever since, haven't you?
Yes, sir. Since 97.
97. And so you've been there, you've been ministering along and started to run into some difficulties, didn't you? Share with us a bit about, what you feel comfortable sharing about what that was like over the last couple of years.
Sure. I'm sure most pastors would understand this. Plymouth was my first love. I'd pastored other churches, but Plymouth just seemed like home. And I'll never forget the day. I could almost show you exactly where we were, what highway we were on, and almost the exact spot when my wife said to me that if God let us retire right here in Plymouth, North Carolina, it would be okay with her. That was our dream.
Yeah.
Sometime later, probably 2-3 years later, my wife began to battle depression. I came home one day, found her in the center of the bed, crying with a checkbook, and didn't understand that because I'd never been around it. And so I asked her what was wrong. All she said was, "I can't handle this." And so I picked the checkbook up and said, "It's okay. I'll take care of it from now," and walked out of the room. It wasn't until later she was able to tell me what she was battling. Again, I didn't understand it. She did well for several years. I knew something had gotten more serious, and I'd been praying, "God, you've got to help me help my wife. I don't know what to do. I've never dealt with this, never been around it." And so I was praying. I came home and she met me at the door and she said, "I need to go home." And of course, again, not thinking about depression or any of that, I said to her, "Give me a couple weeks. I've got this to do and that to do, and then we'll go home for a week. It won't be a problem."
Yeah.
And then she said, "No, I need to go home." And I said, you mean you need to move home?" And she said, "Yes." Went back to my knees, got on my knees and said, "God, you misunderstand me. I need to help my wife here. This is where we want to be." And I didn't hear an audible voice, but it was as plain as I'm talking to you now. God impressed on my heart, "You've always preached family first. Do you believe it?"
Yeah.
And so I threw up my hand and said, "Okay, God, I'll take her home." And so we came home. Things went well for a while. We settled in. We owned property here. Her dad had deeded us years ago. So we put a house there, and things were going well. Our oldest son had got married and moved out, and then eventually, of course, our other two children married, and so it was just Debbie and me. And things went well until December of 21. And a lot of things took place in December of 21. Actually a little before that, but especially December. My wife battling depression. Uh, I had gotten a call from her work that said, you need to come. And so I went, and she had a breakdown. We sought the medical help we felt like we needed to seek. And things just spiraled from there.
Yeah. So it was quite a difficult time, and you were trying to do everything you could do to help her. And
Yes,
it kind of even looked like she was doing a little bit better, didn't it? And then, but things continue to get worse. And you experience really what no person wants to experience.
yes.
So people are listening now, and they're thinking, what can I do? Or maybe they're in a situation similar to what you've experienced. At this point, what kinds of things would you recommend they do in situations like you were in?
Well, I think first of all, we've got to be honest with ourselves. I grew up in church. It's all I've ever known. Started pastoring almost 48 years ago now, or entered the ministry almost 48 years ago, and knew all the, for a lack of a better word, religious rhetoric we use. The things we like to quote to each other. All things work together for good. All those things. And one of the things that happened was I've been privileged to serve with Brother Reuben Cason and the executive board of the North Carolina State Association for Real Baptists. And they asked me if I would share a little bit of our journey, or share a devotion, actually. And so I spoke on our journey. This was when Debbie was going through some difficult time, but there were no signs of anything, that I didn't feel like could be overcome. We just called it a storm.
Right.
Didn't think that storm could get any worse, but it did. And so I think we got to be realistic. We've got to understand that we can know the scriptures
Mm-hmm.
and still have the questions.
Mm-hmm.
We can pray the prayers and God still not choose to answer the way we would like for him to answer.
Mm-hmm.
And that was true for us. So I would say, I say this often, go back to what you know.
Mm-hmm.
Go back to what you can rest in. I do encourage people to ask the question, why?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, after all, Jesus asked it on a cross. And his question was, why did you forsake me?
Yes.
It had nothing to do with the suffering or the sin. It was, why do I feel left alone? And I believe we've got to be that honest and
Yes.
open. It's been a difficult journey, and yet God was patient with me.
Yeah.
And so I say, go back to what you know, be honest, be open, and be willing to seek the help that you need. I didn't think I needed any,
Mm-hmm.
and soon I found that wasn't true.
So let's unpack that a little bit. So one of the things you said, go ahead and ask God why. Go ahead and talk to God. And you gave the example of Jesus. Why hast thou forsaken me? I think our listeners can also see that with Job. Job asked all kinds of questions,
Yes,
and you also see it with John the Baptist. Are you the coming one? Are you the Messiah? Or should we seek
right.
someone else? And so really, when we ask the questions, it gives the Lord a chance to speak back to us, either through his word, or we kind of get a peace about it. I think I
Yes,
hear
sir.
you saying. And then you mentioned, don't be afraid, or don't hold back from seeking help. So maybe share a bit about that, and what are options for people that are out there in similar situations.
One thing that I'm very grateful for is the counseling that's been provided by our national association. I've talked to men in other denominations who are just amazed that we even have such a program. And I can't tell you what that's done for me personally.
Yeah.
When I first heard the idea, it was, that old macho thing, I don't need any help, I can make it, I'm okay. I soon learned I wasn't okay, that I needed the help. And so graciously, our denomination has allowed me that. And to go through that counseling with Brother Tom, and to just feel safe, just feel like I could open my heart, not be condemned, that somebody was going to listen and understand, and even when they couldn't fully grasp where I've been, was there to support and pray for and help and talk through some issues. And I would say to anybody, and I know we have that for our pastors and I think their wives, but I would say to anybody, seek good godly counsel. Find it, it's there, and we need it. I've talked to some pastors that I love, I respect, and they just don't see the need for it. And I want to say, hey, man, I'm telling you, it's worth it. It's worth reliving the pain. It's worth going through the heartaches and the heartbreaks to
So
know there's healing.
it is, and so it's been helpful to you. You mentioned a couple of things. You mentioned just knowing you can confidentially talk to someone. There's just, it sounds like you're saying there's nothing quite like that, and nothing quite like working through something with someone partnering with you, even though they've not been through the same thing you've been through. Right. They have helped Tom, and our folks that work in this arena have helped people who have. And so you're saying, let's not try to be macho or anything like that. Seek it out. And
Yes,
I'll say, you're saying, how do we do that? Well, you could give us a call here at the national offices.
yes, sir.
You could also email us at questions@nafwb.org, and we'll get you set up real quick. We'll figure out what's the best avenue to help with you, and we'll get that to you. So I know that's been your experience, and I know you have. I'm going to just say, Brother Sherman, you've done a good job of sending people our way.
Mm-hmm.
And there's something to be said for that too, brother. So we thank you for that. Now, you're kind of trying to go on offense now, aren't you? A bit. You're trying to use some bad things that have happened to you, and you're trying to use it to help other people. Share with our audience a little bit about that. What's your kind of next steps, so to speak?
Well, I've entered into what I call songs in the night. Many years ago, I preached a message with that title. And it's one of those, where people came and said, preacher, I wish you'd preach that again. But it was preached in, for lack of better terminology, happier times. It was, I had buried my mom, my dad, had some pain in my life, but nothing like recent situations. And so, it was an easier message to preach back then, for lack of a better word.
Yeah.
And after a situation, back in April of last year, I had gone to the church, had been there for a activity we had with the intention of going home, picking my wife up. We were going to a grandson's birthday party. And I had kissed her bye that morning, said, I love you. She said, I love you. I went out the door and wasn't prepared when I came back home. Let me just put it this way. I came home to find my wife had stepped into eternity.
Mm-hmm.
And the pain was overwhelming. I couldn't pray. and I couldn't read my Bible for a week. I could just weep. That's all I did.
Yeah.
Through a series of various events and people being very kind, being very gracious, and helping, I received a book, a little book that I read, and it was one of those where, you know, we're quick to quote scriptures to others, and then when it comes to us, you know, I know it, but it doesn't help.
Yeah.
But I felt obligated to read this little book because it was sent by a family member. And so, being obligated, I read the book. The very first thing I did was hit Romans 8:28 in that book. And I thought, here we go again. But I read it because I felt obligated. I'm so glad I did.
Yeah.
One of the things that the author said is we've got to go from the whys to the what. What do I do with this now? I mean, this is where we are. So
Yeah.
what do I do? And so through a sabbatical that Emmanuel Church graciously gave me, I was able to spend time away just without the phone, just focusing, praying, seeking God's face. And through that event, I was talking to Brother Tom, our counselor, and I was just struggling. I didn't know what to do. And so he mentioned a dual ministry. Why not pastor your church and do some on the side? And so that resonated.
Yeah.
And so that's what I began doing. I talked with my deacons. We met. We agreed on one Sunday a month that I could be gone from the church for this purpose, outside of, you know, revivals and those things, but just specifically for songs in the night. And so we just started mentioning it just word of mouth. And God has been gracious to open doors. As a matter of fact, right now I have something scheduled every month all the way through January of next year. So just taking hope to the hurting, to say, yeah, it's hard. We don't deny the hardness. We weep, but we can also learn how to weep and rejoice at the same time.
Absolutely.
And I think people need to hear that.
They do. Well, you've made a lot of progress in over a year plus here, and you're trying to take what has happened and you're trying to use it to help other people. And it looks a little bit to me like it's helping you too,
Yes, sir.
Pastor Sherman, as you go along, you try to minister to others.
Yes, sir.
Well, brother, I know this has probably been a bit difficult. I thank you so much for the time and sharing with us today. And really, I thank you for your life, your modeling for us how we deal with difficult situations. And I think based on some of what we've experienced already, you are helping. You're helping a lot of people in various situations and helping them to do what they need to do to be better stewards of their lives, if you will. So I just thank you for what you've done, and I thank you for what you're doing, Brother Sherman. And thank you for taking the time to share with us today, my brother.
Thank you for having me, Dr. Moody.
I want to thank you all for listening today. Maybe you know someone that would benefit from this podcast. I encourage you to share it with them, point them in the particular direction. If they'd like to get in touch with Brother Sherman, encourage them to email us at questions@nafwb.org, and we'll make that happen. Maybe you're interested, or you know someone that might be interested in the counseling program. You can email us there as well, questions@nafwb.org, and we'll get them set up with that. Remember, every little thing we do, it truly does matter, and it truly is helpful because we truly are better together. Thank you.